Hi, I'm Clark from Temptress, and today we're going to talk about lightning. What happens when it hits your boat and how to keep you from getting hit. When new sailors or people who don't sail are thinking about living the life that Emily and I have chosen, they ask us questions, fear kind of questions. What about pirates? What about sharks? Piracy can happen and it's probably getting worse, but you can avoid it. Just don't go there. And piracy is just crime at sea. I tell you, I'm more afraid of crime at sea when I'm around Miami than I am when I'm here in the Dominican Republic. Sharks, only one place in the world am I concerned, and that's the Bahamas, because there's so many divers diving, spearfishing, they've associated us with food. Just like bears in national parks. You feed the bear, they get dangerous. Sharks can be the same way, but generally sharks are not a real problem, and you can deal with that. But lightning is big, lightning is powerful, and we are exposed. Lightning is something that I'm afraid of, and lightning is something I prepare for. You should too. Today I'm going to talk about everything I know about lightning. I'm motivated because I live on a sailboat. I am an engineer, so I know how to read the research. I've gotten good research from the American electrical companies, the power distribution companies. Trust me, they look into this. They have a lot of towers out there and they have to know about lightning. I'm going to talk to you about how to avoid getting hit in the first place and how to build your boat in such a way that when it gets hit, it minimizes the damage. I've owned Temptress for 30 years now. I've been living on her most of the time since I bought her. I've been out cruising for the last 20 years. I've been all over the place. I've been to a lot of places where there's a lot of lightning. In fact, as I went down the west coast of the Americas, so many times I'd get to a place and there'd be a lot of thunder and lightning and the locals would say, "We're the lightning capital of the world." And you'd believe them and you go, "Oh wow, I'm past that. Now I don't have to worry about that anymore." And then you'd get someplace else and it would be worse. And they would say, "We're the lightning capital of the world." A lot of people are the lightning capital of the world. Personally, I feel the lightning capital of the world was the Caribbean side of Panama. You're in the intertropical convergence zone. I was there during the summer, during the height of it. And the ITCZ just has thunderstorms like you would not believe. Lightning everywhere. I've come up with some tactics. I've done a lot of research, and I think I've got lightning sort of figured out. I'd like to explain what is lightning, and I'd like to explain what you can do to keep yourself from getting hit, and if you do get hit, how to keep your boat from sinking and having terrible damage and hurting the people aboard the boat. First, what is lightning? Obviously, it's this big noise and the electricity that comes from the sky. But at a deeper level, I wanted to know what it was so I could protect myself. Before I left for sailing, I looked into, who knows about lightning? And it turns out the people that do the most study on lightning that I could find, and at least wrote the best reports, were the power companies, the American power companies. They own a whole lot of towers holding up wires, and those towers are susceptible to hits by lightning. And if they can minimize the hits they get, it greatly minimizes their expenses. So they really wanted to know about lightning and published good stuff. So according to them, or my interpretation of what they said, let me tell you about lightning. Well, lightning is caused by these convective clouds. They're getting ready to rain or they've started raining, and inside them there's a lot of activity, a lot of winds crossing, a lot of things rubbing against other things. Those rubbing of things cause static voltage differentials, much like if you rub a balloon on your hair, you can build up a static charge. Except clouds are massive. Clouds are really big. And I know you're saying, yeah, they're really big. They're really big. Think about it this way. Look up someday and see a little dot going through the sky with a contrail behind it. And that's like a 747. That is a massive, massive airplane. And it's at the altitude that these clouds are. It's nothing. It's not a dot on the end of one of the pieces of fluff on one of these clouds. These clouds are just huge. And the charges they generate are massive. Well, that eventually builds up and it has to go somewhere. Now the charge can be positive or the charge can be negative. There's kind of an even number of each. So lightning either comes down, the electrons come down, or the lightning is the electrons going up to match the cloud that's up there. So now we've got a cloud in our little model here. It's floating along. It's just a bunch of charge, positive or negative, but it's just a bunch of charge as far as we're concerned. And it's floating along over the water. Well, this huge charge induces a similar charge in the ocean below it. So if this is a negatively charged cloud, it'll make the ocean below it more negative than it normally would be. And as it passes over, the cloud causes this light charge, and they just travel along. Now, if a cloud had enough energy differential to fire its lightning before it got to you, no big deal. It's done its thing, it's safe for a little while. Passes over you, you don't care. If a cloud doesn't have enough energy yet, it could pass over you without a problem, and then when it's well past you, you don't worry about those clouds. But there's clouds out there with your number on them, and they're coming along, and they're any cloud that would want to fire anywhere near you. Those are what you're protecting yourself from. So you realize there are situations where there's like this hair trigger, and you don't want to be the thing that sets it off. So we got these two charge states again. This one is being inducted and it's moving along. If you're a boat and this flows kind of under you because you're just anchored there or sailing there, and you keep the old charge state, if you don't tightly couple yourself to the new charge state as it comes by and accept it very quickly, you become the old charge state. You become more electric negative than the cloud around you, and you could trigger the event. So what you want to do to keep the lightning from hitting you in the first place is electrically couple yourself to the water around you really, really well. And particularly if you're a sailboat and you have a mast, you want to connect yourself to the air around you. And that's not insignificant. It's all about making yourself couple with the water and the air around you. When it changes charge state, you want to be able to change charge state. So how you couple with the water? You take as much of the metal on your boat as is practical, and you run some kind of a wire from them down to something that's very well connected to the water. The very well connected to the water could be a purchased thing that they make called a dynaplate. You bolt onto the side of the boat. It's just lots and lots of surface area, and they're handy for radio purposes too. Or it could be your propeller and your shaft. That's a lot of metal. Older boats like mine, I have a bronze centerboard, so I have that tied in, and that's 2,000 pounds of bronze, so that ties me in pretty good. But you just in some way. If you don't have something handy and you just want to have an answer right now, people they often do it with a zinc because it's nice to have a zinc in the water extra anyway, and they just put a wire into the water and connect it to their rigging. That can make a difference. So you want to be tightly coupled to the water. You also want to be tightly coupled to the air, and most people don't do this. What you want there is an ion dissipator. And this is your basic lightning rod. This is Benjamin Franklin technology, and it worked then, it works now. It's a pointy object, very sharp point, up high, of course, and that sharp point dissipates ions just really, really well. What you usually do on a boat is instead of one sharp point, you get a piece of this device, you just buy it. It's a piece of stainless steel tubing with a whole bunch of stainless steel wire in it, crimped down and then splied out like a pom-pom. And it gives you thousands of little sharp points. They work a charm. I highly recommend them. They don't cost very much, easy install, go up, tap a couple holes, screw it on, you're done. Those things will keep you tightly coupled to the charge around you. When the storm cloud passes over you, you'll be safe. If you do get hit by lightning, there's a different solution. No modern boats I've ever seen do this. It used to be they did it to high-end boats, but not anymore. You need to have a path for that lightning to follow. If you have a good path that isn't your wiring system, so it doesn't go through all your electronics, and most importantly, isn't the hull itself, you can survive a massive lightning hit. Here's what can happen when you have a lightning hit. Lightning hits your rig, comes down your mast. If you've got a keel step mast and it hits the fiberglass hull, that's only well, between parts of an inch to, in Temptress's case, many inches thick. Lightning can jump that. It's an insulator, but it still can jump past that. And it can jump right into the water, right through your hull. And that wouldn't be a problem at all, except that no hull is completely dry. No fiberglass hull is completely dry. And when it makes that jump through your hull, it heats up the little tiny bits of water that are in there, and they flash to superheated steam instantly and blow a 2-foot hole in the bottom of your boat. And your failure from lightning isn't electrical. It's just plain old-fashioned sinking because you have a hole in your boat. So you need to give it a path. And if you give virtually every piece of metal on your boat a path the way I'm about to describe, there will be tremendous paths for the lightning to follow, and it's very unlikely that it's going to cause damage to your boat, and very unlikely it's going to harm anybody on the boat. On Temptress, what they did way back when she was built is they took copper strap that's about 1.5 inches wide, quite thinnish, but about 1.5 inches wide, and that's important. You could do it with wire, but this really, really high voltage stuff tends to just travel on the surface of conductors. So a strap is a lot of surface area. And there's a strap that runs the whole length of the boat from the bow pulpit and the windlass and all of that, right down through to the aft end of the boat. All the stanchions are tied down into it. All the shrouds are tied down into it. The mast step, of course, is tied down into it. I think some of the tankage is tied down into it. The engine is definitely tied into it. And that provides a path for the electricity to travel through. And it also provides a way of coupling with induction to the ocean around you. That helps you to not get hit. And also, as a side effect, it makes your ham and your single sideband transmission so much better. It makes a counterpoise. I want to tell a story now. When I first got Temptress and I went out away from Seattle, there wasn't much lightning in Seattle. It was fine. I got out to where there was a lot of lightning. I started getting hit. And I got hit by lightning once, and I was just like amazed. I got hit by lightning, and I'm talking to all the other boats. Oh, I've never been hit by lightning. Well, 2 months later, I got hit again. And like 2 months later, I got hit again, and I kept getting hit, and I kept getting hit. So there was something about this boat that liked to be hit. I'm tightly coupled to the water around me. I've got very good bonding into the ocean. But when I left, I had done all the research and I wanted an ion dissipator. I decided this was a really good idea. I should have an ion dissipator. Luck of the draw, the supply chains were all messed up when I left. This was back in the 90s, and there just weren't any to be had. I'm calling warehouses, I'm calling distributors. I'm not finding it anywhere. The company just produces a massive number, and then they don't produce them for many months. They produce a small company-ish, and they produce other things, and then they start producing these again. Just bad timing on my part. So I'm getting hit. I get down to Panama City, just about to go through the canal, and I went into a chandlery, and there was one on the shelf, so I bought it. So I'm coming back to the boat. I got my ion dissipator. I'm going to happily install this thing. The engineer in me knows it's going to help. And all these guys see it, and it's like, oh, you're not going to put one of those on your boat? They cause lightning hits. They are terrible. Well, you know, there's a lot of opinions in the cruising world, most of it developed on bar stools. I knew not to listen. But I get back to my boat, and about an hour later, this guy comes up. I hadn't met him before, but he was also on the dock. And he comes over. He didn't know me yet. He didn't know my background, but he really knows his stuff. And he wanted to make sure that I was going to put on the ion dissipator because it is useful. Well, I said, yeah, no worries. I'm convinced. They did not change my opinion. And then he told me a story. So I'm going to tell his story. So he's there in this very bay, and he's got his ion dissipator up, of course, because it's just installed in his boat. And one of these big lightning storms comes in. And a friend of his is calling him on the radio and all upset. Well, the guy with the ion dissipator doesn't know about it because it's a big storm and he's disconnected his antennas from his radios, as you do on the really big storms. I'll get into that later. He finds out later on the story from the friend, and the friend is all freaked out because at the mast tip, he had this blue-green event happening. It was St. Elmo's fire. What it was is the ion dissipator is so effective that the charge from the boat is dissipating in the air and actually making the air plasma and glow around it. And that's it working. That is a good thing. That is making him invisible to that big cloud. From my own point of view, I put on the ion dissipator, and now I get hit every 3 or 4 years instead of every other month. It really changed everything. Went to the San Blas not long after that. That is where I saw the worst lightning I've ever seen. It lasted for days. The storm just went on and on. It was raining at 4 inches an hour for days. After the storm, I had no damage. Everything was fine. A neighboring boat had been hit in the night and took out all of its charging sources. He came by. That's kind of how we met. He needed help, and we put him back together. This is our ion dissipator. It doesn't look like here's a picture of one from Amazon. You can get them on Amazon. After doing this video, I'm probably going to order another one. But ours still has a lot of pointy wires. It's still in pretty good shape. It probably is still doing its job. The irony of it is I'm showing you that our ion dissipator has been hit by lightning and is melted. Seems ridiculous, but what you've got to realize absolutely on living this life, this is not the world of lawyers and politicians and cops and everything's going to be taken care of, or at least you're going to be lied to about it. This is the real world out here. Lightning is absolutely chaotic. You don't buy things to protect you. You buy things to make you more protected. There is no answer. There is no absolute safety. That lightning that hit that ion dissipator and did the damage doesn't feel any remorse, and I can't sue it. So you've done everything you do to the build of your boat to make your boat tougher for lightning. Not get hit, be able to handle the hit when it happens. But still, you will get in situations where there's quite a storm, or there's a very high likelihood of a really big storm, and you'd like to do a little more. Well, the first thing you should do is disconnect the antennas for your radios. Your antennas get hit very easily. They're out there. When they're the best path, which they tend to be, they get hit. I've had the VHF antenna twice now blown right off the boat. Just gone. It probably just broken and it fell in the water, but I never found parts. When that happens, the cable is usually shot too, and you have to rewire the whole thing. But on both of those occasions, one was I was on the boat down in Costa Rica on the Pacific side, and the other time it happened, I had the boat in storage in Florida, I just wasn't using it. So in both cases, I said, hey, it's likely it's going to get hit, and I disconnected the antennas from the back of the radios. So I didn't have to replace the radios. Also, if you have a ham radio, single sideband radio, and you're using the backstay as your antenna, as is a very good idea. Using bullet connectors, I have a little quick disconnect right on the feed wire to that antenna, and when there's a storm, I just go out and pop it free. Now that means I can't use the radios during the storm, seldom an issue. If I had to make an emergency call, just a matter of screwing in the VHF, but disconnect your radios goes a long ways towards protecting. You're going to find a lot of people talking about putting things in the oven. If you have a stainless steel oven, you kind of have a Faraday cage here, but you really only have a proper Faraday cage if your oven is grounded. So you'd want to run a grounding wire down to your engine or something like that. Again, it's a metal box. If you have a microwave oven on board, same thing. And what you'd want to put in there would be little mission critical items. A chart plotter, and which is also a GPS, of course, nowadays. If you had a spare or even your main chart plotter and you whipped it off and shoved it in your oven and you got hit, and it was one of these times when everything goes out, well, now you can sail to some place where there's an airport and there's postage and you can start getting parts because you have your charts and you have your GPS. If you're a sextant guy, well, I don't know if there's any of us left, but I am, and I would rather not use it. I'd rather use a GPS. I want to thank 19 Vagabond and William Bunting. You guys asked the question that spawned this video. If you had a question about lightning, I hope I covered it. If you didn't have a question about lightning, I'm really happy you watched this video because you should have a question. There's some things you should be doing. It is probably one of the bigger actual dangers out here. It's a pretty safe world we all live in now, but lightning is what lightning always has been and always will be. If you have any other questions, we're open. Write them down in the comments and we'll get around to it. Maybe we'll do a video someday. Thanks for watching, and bye from Temptress. I want to tell you about another lightning story. I didn't get hit this time, but this was my worst lightning storm at sea. I'm out coming up, I'm in the Caribbean now. I'm sailing to someplace in Mexico from some atoll out in the middle of nowhere. But it was all day, all night, all day kind of a distance. I'm sailing along on the first day, and this line of storm is coming at me. Just mean, as long as you can see, coming at me. So I take down sails, I put double reef in the main, got rid of the head sail, and it's coming. And I started the engine because it just looked mean. And well, when it got to me, it was blowing 50. And it blowed 50 sustained for hours. I kind of used the engine to balance against the reefed main and just did a heave-to thing. You know, it's not like it was going to last forever. It was a line. And I knew it was coming. It was in the forecast. I didn't realize how big it was. And when 50 knots happens out in the ocean, it's weird. Because first there's your normal ocean waves. In that area, they were 6, maybe 8 feet. First thing that happened, the ocean went flat. The energy in the wind was so high, it was unhappy with the frequency of the waves, and it just knocked everything flat and then started building it its own way. By the end of the storm, we had new waves again, but for a while, it was just flat. The water was just streaming off as it was breaking the waves down and throwing them at me along with the rain. I had to have someone bring me up a scuba mask, and I had to wear a scuba mask for the duration of the storm because I couldn't keep my eyes open. Well, we get right in it, and the lightning starts happening, and it's just pounding everywhere, right around the boat. Within 20, 50 feet of the boat, there's hits. One hit happened, and I just had to laugh at myself afterwards. It happened, and I was right over there on the boat, basically here on the other side, and I laid flat right down the deck. And I get up afterwards, and it's like, what a fool. Lightning is traveling at the speed of light. There's no way you can get out of its way. So I stopped dodging after that, but it can be terrifying. Another lightning story. I'm sailing dead slow off the Bahama Bank, heading back towards Florida, way down south. I'm actually heading towards Quezal Bank from the Grand Bahama Bank. And the way the banks are, they heat up the water, and the wind blows in weird directions because of it. And you can use it to your advantage. It's really, really quite a handy place to sail. Well, the thunderstorms weren't coming onto the bank, but they were going around it. And when I was miles away from where they were crossing in front of me, many, many miles away, I could see that a cloud would fire lightning, and then its charge would go down, and the neighboring clouds would fire lightning into it. And it was pretty impressive. It wasn't your normal heat lightning. It was like actual bolts coming in from all directions and then going down. Well, I get to the area where I have to make the crossing into the deep water. I'm sailing into the deep water. By the way, I had a small engine problem. This was many years ago, and the engine leaked oil when I ran the engine, so I just wasn't using the engine. I had lots of time, so I'm sailing home kind of dead slow, probably averaging 3 knots. I'm sailing along, and I realize there's no way I can get between these storms. The only way I'm going to get any wind is one of these storms, so I'm going to get plastered by one of these things. And then I got a little closer, and I could see the one ahead of me and how its lightning worked, and it wasn't your zzz. It was like a 50-foot diameter cylinder of light, and it would last 5 seconds, I swear. That's a long time. And it would just burn and burn, and I know that the other clouds must have been feeding it for this to happen. And it would be like being under a 50-foot diameter welding rod for 5 seconds. There would be nothing left of the boat. There's just no way anything could survive that. And it's like, oh God, it's the one time that I've been absolutely terrified of lightning. And then it occurs to me, I hadn't slept in a while because I'd been traveling so long and so slow. My engine does run fine, it just leaks some oil. So I turned around, went back, it was only like a mile, got back on the bank, anchored, made a very nice dinner, spent the night, watched the storm from a safe distance, fixed the engine the next morning, and then took off. But lightning can be really bad too. When you can, avoid it.